Greetings and welcome. My name is Mike Bankhead. I am your host. I'm a bass player and songwriter from the Gem City, Dayton, Ohio. I am glad to welcome Maxime Cholley on today's episode. He is a French drummer currently based in New York City. I actually recorded this episode and Friday's episode, which is also with Maxime, but in French. I recorded these before last week's chat with Marcelo. So keep that in mind as you listen on the You Could Be My Aramis podcast, because Maxime and Marcelo are good friends, and we mentioned that in the conversation. I think that you are going to like him. Let's get to the chat, shall we? Hey there, Maxime. Happy, what day is it? Happy Thursday.
Thank you very much. Happy Thursday to you too.
I would like you to introduce yourself to the listeners and explain to them why your English is accented.
So my name is Maxime Cholley. Cholley is my last name. It's a French name. So I am indeed French, which is why I have a slight accent, although I try to work on it a lot so that I don't sound too French, but to keep some mystery, But so I'm from France originally. I was born there in the southeast of France, near the border with Italy and Switzerland. So it's a very beautiful area close to the Alps, the French Alps. So I recommend anybody who hasn't been there to visit, because to me, it's the most beautiful part, but I'm totally biased, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was born there, and I started music very early on. I just wanted to play the drum set at 6 years old for, I don't know what reason specifically. It just came to me. My parents never sort of, forced me to go to music school like I know it's the case in certain families. I just asked to do it, and they were amazing enough to be, super supportive, and they made it happen. And then really early on, I had access to a full drum set, which is rare. So I was very lucky in that regard. And yeah, they supported me. I went from a small music school to a bigger one in a bigger city. And this kind of went on as I went to high school, and where, you start to have to decide what you want to do with your life. And it seemed like music was going to be a thing, at that point, while everybody was deciding to be a doctor or an engineer or whatever. It seemed like that was, for me, music was going to be the one thing that I wanted to pursue, or that if I didn't pursue it, I would regret it my whole life. So I was deciding, okay, I should probably give it a shot. And my mom was very adamant for me to do it in a serious manner, to not just be a musician, and she said, okay, you can do that, but you have to do something that's I'm trying to think how she put it, that's serious, or that guarantees you some kind of success. And I was already aware that some kind of success in music is never guaranteed. But I had this teacher of mine, one of my teachers, who went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. So, somehow I, ended up talking to him more and realizing, that seems to be one of the best music schools in the world. So it seems like a fair choice, for something serious in music, or at least a good beginning. So that's the idea I came up with. And a couple of years later, after I graduated from high school, I moved to Boston, and I started my time at Berklee College of Music. And that's how the long version answer of your question, how do I speak English with a slight accent? Well, that's how it happened. I moved to Boston in 2014, started studying at Berklee, and I stayed for 5 semesters, so not the regular time that people spend there, because I just really wanted to get to it, to start my career. So I sort of navigated through the academic hurdles of Berklee, and managed to graduate early. And yeah, I stayed 1 extra year there, then moved to New York City, which is where I'm currently in. And yeah, the rest is It's history.
That's a perfect kind of answer because I like it best when people tell me stories, and that was a great story.
Thank you.
So you talked about your childhood. I was thinking 6-year-old boys just like to hit things, so maybe that's why you picked drums.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah, yeah.
What did your childhood smell like?
That's an interesting question. I would say it smelled really good because my dad is an amazing cook. So, so there was always amazing food in the house. And but I guess if I had to relate that question to music, I would say it smelled like summer nights, barbecues, and good music. Because my dad, it's not random that I asked to play the drums or that I was interested in music, because my dad, without being a professional musician himself, he studied music when he was a kid and was very talented. So talented, in fact, that the music school he was in had to buy new books for him to get ahead because he was too good for that school that he was in. And they even reached out to his parents and said, oh, your kid should go to this bigger city to study music and maybe consider it as a career. And back then, at my dad's time, they were very poor. That was not a thing that they would consider doing. So my grandparents said, no way, he's gonna stay where he is and is not gonna do music. And his life would have been probably very different if he were able to pursue music more, because he really had that kind of, I guess people call it talent, or just kind of proclivity to understand music really well. So he was always able to play almost every instrument that he would put his hands on, and that's kind of really interesting because I could be in the house and just hear music all the time, because he would be listening to music, but he would also be able to play the keyboard. And later on, when I was playing drums, later on he would hop on the bass and play with me. And we even had a bunch of friends they had a band, and we played together, drums and bass, father and son in the band. It was very funny. It was very interesting. But yeah, to get back to the smell question, my dad had this habit of, in summer, because we lived in the countryside, he would have start a fire, and we would barbecue some meat, and there was always a music playing on the stereo outside. So that was this whole vibe. And I remember Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, those kind of bands. They were just playing in the background, and it was this beautiful landscape, the French countryside, and the smell of barbecue. So that's kind of what I would remember, the smell of my childhood. That's what it was.
Now that you're a professional musician, I'll bet your dad's really proud of you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes he can't believe it when I tell him, certain people I play with, or he just sees what's going on. He's like, oh wow, I still remember you when you were a kid starting to play the drums. And he's definitely really proud.
So you come to Boston, and now you live in New York. Those are really big cities, and they're so different than Savoie. So different. What were some of the things that it was hard for you to adjust to when you come to a completely different culture and a completely different pace of life? Like, I'm just trying to imagine it, and that had to have been a challenge. Apart from the fact that you had to go to school and work hard, you have all these other things you're dealing with. Can you talk about that?
For sure. Yeah, it was definitely a weird experience. Although after the fact, I realized that starting with Boston was great in terms of adjusting to a new lifestyle, because Boston is sort of human-sized, and it has its kind of European vibe in some places. Like I remember if you know Boston, you will know what I'm talking about. But Newbury Street has all these, shops and small sort of houses, buildings that are just kind of tiny. And they also have a bunch of old looking churches, which is always strange because they're never really old compared to what we have in France and Europe. It's never that old. It's just made to look old. So you can kind of see that it's not really really real, but so that was a funny thing. But yeah, at least there was this easing into it. Boston has its downtown financial district, big buildings and everything, but it was not crazy like New York is. So I could sort of adapt and start learning what it is to live in America through Boston. And it's also a very international city because of the universities there. So it was easy to sort of learn how to be in this new environment with other people who came from other cultures also. So that was interesting. But I'll remember my whole life the first time I went to New York City. I went with my best friend in college, James Giannoni, an amazing bass player, and he was also my roommate. And he's from Texas, and so yeah, shout out to James. We took a bus to New York City from Boston to go see a concert at the 55 Bar, which is sadly now closed. They just recently closed, and it was very sad because it was one of the best venues in the city, and it had this thing that nobody else had, where they had a lot of like I would say a groove music rather than a straight ahead like swing jazz music. So it was one of these clubs that had high level people playing groove, playing like rock plus improvisation at a very high level, and that's what we went to see. We went to see Wayne Krantz Trio at the 55. And he was with Nate Wood on drums and Tim Lefebvre on bass, which is to me one of the best versions of that trio, of Wayne Krantz Trio. And I remember we took the bus and we went to see the show. And as the bus drives into New York City, and I'm seeing all these huge buildings, and I'm just looking at this, and I'm like, people must be insane to live in a place like this. Like it doesn't make sense. And I also remember thinking, I will never live here. Like, it's not even...
Oops.
Yeah, exactly. I remember it's not even a possibility that... how can people live like this? And yeah, I mean, the whole experience was incredible. I remember we sort of walked through Times Square a little bit and just saw this insane thing. And I'm like, what is this? Like, how is that possible? It's kind of the thoughts that would drift in my head. And we went to see the show, and I also was thinking while watching the show, how is this possible? Because those three guys in that trio are just mind-blowingly amazing. And I remember we got the first set, we watched the first set, and we managed to stay for the second set without paying again or something. We just tried to make it happen like broke students we were, and we watched the second set. It was so amazing, and completely mind-blowing. And we had to leave the same night because obviously we were not going to pay for a hotel back then, so we had a bus at 4 a.m. or some stupid kind of thing like that you only do when you're a college student. And yeah, I remember going back to Boston that same day and going to class, the day after a night trip on the bus. And yeah, it was just the perfect first New York experience of looking at a place that doesn't make any sense. And I still sort of believe that now. But also seeing the most amazing, the highest level possible in music in front of you, and it's very accessible because we could talk to the guys. Like at the end of the show, we could talk to them, and they were nice, and they lived here, so we could see them next week again. And I remember just thinking, well, I guess that's the pinnacle. That's where the top action is happening, and that's how I guess I ended up in New York City. But yeah, the thoughts of this is crazy still goes through my head almost every time I take the J train and I see the skyline and the city, and I'm just like, this is still crazy. But I'm now here, and it feels like home. It feels more like home than when I go back to France, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I I mean, I grew up in the United States, and I feel about New York the way that you did. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's living on top of each other, and there's just so many people. And I love to visit. I like the restaurants. I like the culture. I have an uncle that lives in Brooklyn.
Nice.
There is no universe in which I would live in New York. It's just not. I wouldn't. I mean, after like 3 or 4 days, I've had enough. It's too big, too
Yeah,
much.
yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, it's because I remember the first few days I moved to New York City. Um, I really had this kind of dread of thinking I might not be able to be okay here because I moved to that I moved in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, uh, and I was in this very tiny room in an apartment, which was it was a decently good looking apartment, but it was a tiny room in a 5 people apartment. So like it was shared among 5 people, and my bedroom was next to the street. And I remember, putting all my stuff in the bedroom. And at that time, we didn't have, I didn't bring a bed with me from Boston, so it was just, a bunch of yoga mats at first, until I figure out, things and how to get my bed and all that situation kind of figured out. And I remember just kind of being there, and there was this dog who wouldn't stop barking for whatever reason. It wouldn't stop. It was just rah, rah, rah. It was never stopping. Plus Brooklyn noises, you can imagine, the cars and people honking, and I remember just being there and be like, I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna be able to live here. It's just too much. It's maybe I made a mistake, And yeah, somehow, the dog stopped barking, and you know, after a couple days, couple weeks of being there, I feel like it's like everywhere you start to downsize how the environment feels, because you start to know what things are and where things are, and you start to know your neighborhood, and to find, I think, yeah, I guess I found comfort into being able to place, oh, this is where I'm gonna go do my groceries. This is the cool restaurant, 2 blocks away, and the subway station is right there, and that kind of stuff. You start centering your life around a few key elements where it's not just everything unknown, and that's just sort of happened, and it helped. It helped making me less sort of freaked out about all this craziness and everything being so huge. So yeah, it was tough, and it's definitely a different thing to visit and live here, because when you live here and you see crazy things, it's not like you're gonna it's fine, I'll be gone soon. It's like, no, that's my reality now, and it's kind of unfortunate, because I can feel that New York City is progressively getting worse, especially in certain aspects that you wouldn't think it could, but it does, and then that's really unfortunate. I'm sure there's many factors, many reasons for that, but yeah, hopefully there's kind of a doomsday feeling in New York City currently, and I hope it's not showing up the first signs of like, hey, maybe New York City is not going to be what it used to be again. And that's a thing that as musicians we all kind of feel. We can feel the vibe sort of shifting after COVID. It definitely changed everything, but there's some kind of something in the air. It just feels like a different New York, and it hasn't been back to what it used to be before. So venues closing. I was mentioning the 55 closing, things like that. We'll see. I'm usually a pretty positive person, or at least I strive to be. So we'll see what's going on, what's going to happen. But yeah, New York City is going through something rough at the moment, I feel. Yeah.
Drummers are, where I live, the hardest part of a band to find, and they're very valuable. And I imagine, especially a drummer that's been at it as long as you and has your level of education, is definitely sought after. How many bands are you currently in?
Uh, I was going to say I should move where you are. It seems like you guys need more drummers.
Dayton,
Um,
Ohio, and I need one very badly, but
yeah, Ohio was nice. I've been there. I think once or twice. We played a few shows. I forget what the name of the theater, but so how many bands? Uh, I should list them. I should give them a shout out because they all deserve it.
see, the point I'm making is you actually have to stop and think about it, but because
Yeah. Oh
that is
yeah.
how in demand you are. But yeah, go ahead and tell me how many.
For sure. No, yeah, yeah, definitely playing a lot. I mean, New York City, there's no shortage of projects. But yeah, yeah, I'll give them all a shout out because they really deserve it. They all work super hard. So I guess I'll start with the one I was playing with yesterday, which is that's one that's really, dear to my heart because we just started it with one of my best friends, Marcelo Macanian. He's a bass player from Brazil, and it's a duo that we decided to start because we keep playing together in many projects, but we never sort of sit down and make music for each other, like for him and I just kind of creating things. But because we've played so much together, we sort of developed this, the bass and drums relationship. It's kind of hard to describe. It's almost like a couple.
I'm a
Uh,
bass player, so I get it.
so you know exactly what I
I
mean.
do. Maybe the listeners don't, but yeah,
Yeah,
rhythm section solidarity.
yeah, it's something like that. And it's also, you just have when you play the music, there's the parts that you play are inextricably sort of linked. So you just always aware of each other's existence, and because bass and drums are usually called together, you also get to see each other a lot. And it's funny, the other day I was joking with him like, man, I see you more than your fiance. It's not normal. Like there's a problem there. But so yeah, so we decided to start a band together and release an album in 2023. So yesterday we were recording a music video for the first single in a rooftop on a rooftop in Midtown, and it was amazing. The weather couldn't be better, even though it's January. It was not cold at all. Beautiful sun. So yeah, that band we called it SNAK. I mean, he calls it Snack. I call it SNAK. We'll figure this out whenever we actually release it to the world. But that's kind of an announcement. We haven't announced it to the public yet. So this is kind of a special announcement just for your podcast. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, that's one band that started recently that I'm playing in. But then there's many other ones. So another one that I think you know about, because I think that's how you sort of learned about my existence, is Simona Smirnova.
Yep, that is how
So
I learned
she's
about you.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. So she's an amazing singer and kankless player from Lithuania. Kankless is this traditional instrument from Eastern Europe, and you can think of a harp that she plays horizontally. She is smaller than a harp, obviously, but it's a kind of small harp that she puts on her lap, and she picks the strings, and it has this very beautiful sort of specific sound, and she uses it in a different context, in a more modern jazz context. So it's really interesting music, and we released an album last year. She's now on the tour, a solo tour that she's doing. So she's very, very amazing musician. Very, very happy to play with her. I'm about to go on tour with another singer. Her name is Rini, or that's the name of the band, but her full name is Harini Lagavan, and she's from India. So we're about to go tour in India. for about 3 weeks in February and March. So that's also an amazing band, and the bass player I'm mentioning is also part of that band. So that's another band I'm playing in, kind of jazz slash rock slash electronica mixed with Indian classical, like Indian traditional music. So it's this crazy fusion mix of different musical flavors. It's very cool. So that's another one. Very recently, we also recorded with another friend of mine, Erez Aviram, who is from Israel. He's a composer, and his band is also something else. It's some crazy, crazy band. There's 8 players in total. So he plays piano, but there's a huge, horn section and 2 strings players, and his music is just very, think, film scoring, but adapted to a more performing sort of context. So very, very cool. We just recorded video in the studio, so some stuff is going to come out very soon. Let me think who else. Well, Marcelo Macanian, who I mentioned before in the duo I'm in, he also has his own music, and we released an album with his music recently. Who else? There's many more. There's many more. I also play with this Indian Bollywood singer. His name is Neil, and we perform a lot. We do a lot of private events and things like that. But yeah, I think I'm probably forgetting some, but that's one of the, like, a few bands that I'm playing with quite a bit these days. There's another Indian artist. I play a lot of Indian music, by the way. I know that's kind of random, but it just happened like that.
Hey, if those are the gigs and you can do it, why not?
Yeah, and it's a beautiful music, or a beautiful tradition to study. So I play sometimes with the Berkeley Indian Ensemble, which is this ensemble that was started at Berkeley, and then they sort of realized, wow, there's such a interesting sort of potential for that band. So they started bringing it outside of the school and touring and doing these kind of things. And just now we have an album that's Grammy nominated, and hopefully will win a Grammy.
That would be cool.
That would be amazing. That would be beautiful. So that's another band I play with. And yeah, I'm definitely forgetting a few that they'll come back to me. I'll just let you know.
So the first time I heard you play was Simona's cover of Toxic, which was obviously very playful and pop. And then I looked, I do my research. I looked at some of your resume, and it seems like your expertise might be in jazz, but then on your YouTube page, you have like a couple of metal drum covers. So what's your favorite genre to play? Because it seems like you could do anything.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. It's definitely a compliment to be versatile, at least to me. But my favorite genre to play, I don't really have an answer, because I really enjoy just creating something. So if I can feel, if the song that I'm playing can spark this kind of inspiration, then it'll be enjoyable to me. And now, I'll enjoy playing jazz for a certain set of reasons. It'll be the interaction. It'll be the research of the sound, how deep I can go into textures and things like that. It'll be, I'll enjoy playing funk and groove music because of, locking in with a bass player, being able to have that snapping sound and groove and feel. And I'll enjoy playing metal because of, the intensity behind it, and the intricacy of the parts, of the drum parts. So there's always something kind of, if I can find something that my inner artist will relate to, it doesn't matter. Like I love playing a country song, if the story speaks to me. Even if I'm just playing brushes and I'm playing that's enough. I'll enjoy that. So yeah, that's the answer. That's the answer.
And you're left-handed. I see by the way you set up the kit.
Yes, which is very rare in America. I mean, it's rare worldwide, I guess, but especially in the US, I feel like nobody is left-handed.
I'm
Even if
left-handed.
you are,
Yeah. Now I don't play my instrument left-handed.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I should say not no one is left-handed. What I should say is everybody who is just learns the right-handed way,
Yeah.
which is better. I mean,
When you
I
play
don't know.
guitar or bass, I think it's reasonable to have your strong hand be your fretting hand. Really, right-handed people should play their instruments lefty so they can fret with their good hand, right?
That's fair. That's fair. My one of my roommates, I have two roommates who are amazing people, which is rare, by the way, to put these words together, roommates and amazing people. I'm very fortunate to have these two guys and live under the same roof. Andrew Chang, who is also a full-time musician, amazing guitar player, and Yang Ung, who is a great drummer and an amazing sound engineer. He mostly does sound engineering. And so, anyways, I just wanted to give them a shout out. But I was going to talk about Andrew because Andrew is also left-handed and he plays guitar with, as a right-handed player. And he has these amazing abilities, to voice and play intricate chords and things like that, which definitely, like you said, probably come from that very good left hand. But when we joke around and he's like, man, I could never play metal because my right hand is so unable to be fast and pick, and strum very fast like that. So he's like, man, I should have just learned, left-handed for metal, and then for all the chord stuff that I do, it would be better for me to play right-handed. So yeah, I guess it's like a two-way thing, like, or a double-edged sword is, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I do everything else left-handed. I eat left-handed. I play golf, baseball,
Yeah.
throw left-handed. We are the only people that notice other lefties. My wife always makes fun of me for this because if I'm at a restaurant or wherever, if I see someone writing left-handed, it's like, oh, you're left-handed. Because right-handed people never notice other right-handed people. But
'Cause
we are
that's
so
life.
rare
Yeah.
that we
Yeah,
notice.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Just two more questions. The first one, you've done a lot of travel around the world, and I would love to have you back on a future episode and just talk about travel because I'm fascinated by travel. You're not allowed to pick any French food. What's your favorite food from your travels? Because it's not fair if I let you pick French food.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Favorite food. I would say one thing that I really enjoyed was Indo-Chinese food that I had while I was in India. So there's this kind of, I don't really think we have this even, I mean, probably somewhere in New York City you can find that, but it's not as common. It's really, a spin on Chinese food that Indians will just create. And I remember just being like, wow, this is the best part of Chinese food and the best part of Indian food put together. And yeah, I remember this evening in Mumbai after a show, just eating every possible thing that was put on the table. Yeah, it was just amazing food. Like that's just the memory I have of like, okay, this is epic. so if we had to choose, I would choose that. Yeah.
See, now I want some.
Yeah, for sure.
Noodles, but in curry, or
Yeah. There's stuff like that, or just like an interesting spin on how they would play with spices. Like yeah, it's just I actually forget everything that I ate there because it was kind of like a huge table, and the guy who was welcoming us after the show, he was just like, hey, here's all the food, just eat whatever you want.
And last question, where can I send people to follow your upcoming tour, your journey? I'm assuming you're going to post photos and tell stories. And if people want to learn more about you, where do we send them?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think for now, the best is Instagram because that's the thing where I keep my daily, updates and things that happen. So I'm at Max Cholley, which spells Cholley. It's not the easiest spelling, even for French people, actually. But that's where you can find me and sort of follow easily what's going on for me. I'm working on updating my website, which is, I feel like that's always the lifelong thing that musicians have to do, is just fixing their websites.
Always.
So I'm working on that, and it will be sort of more organized with more pictures and sort of archives of my past travels, because I feel like I've been wanting to do that for a while now. So that would be a thing. MaximeCholleymusic.com. As of now, it's not up to date, so you can see a bunch of things that I did in the past, but nothing that's really relevant and current. But yeah, there's also a bunch of lessons that I want to release to the public, things that I've just experimented with on the drum set, concepts and rhythmical ideas that I've kind of dove into. So that stuff will also be available at some point, probably when I'm back from tour, because this is about to be a few hectic months right now.
Which is, hey, the life of a professional traveling musician is pretty cool. Thank you for your time, and let's do this again, but in French.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Once again, thank you to Maxime for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to me. If you have not had enough of him, well, he's the guest on Friday's episode, but that conversation is in French. As he mentioned, you can follow him on Instagram and see what he is up to on his tour of India. Dear listeners, thank you as well for being here. I truly do appreciate it. If you would be so kind to take the time and like and or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, well, I'd appreciate that too. Have a lovely rest of your day.